There are moments in life when you don't go looking for trouble. Trouble comes looking for you. And when it finds you, you have only two choices. Either bow your head and endure, or stand up and fight to the end. My name is Jack Morgan. I'm just an ordinary man, living on the land passed down by my forefathers, tending my farm and guarding my freedom. But one morning, when the HOA put up a fence and padlocked the gate to my farm, trying to turn me into a pawn in their dirty little game of power, I knew if I didn't fight back, I would lose everything. This is the story of how I didn't just destroy the HOA's scheme, but turned their own game into chains that shackled them instead. A legal battle, a cold-blooded counterstrike, a victory of resilience over oppression. My name is Jack Morgan. Early that morning, when the sky was still pale with the first light, I had just returned from checking the solar-powered water pump system in the southern fields. Only a few hundred steps from home, I froze in place. My heart pounded hard against my ribs. A glaring white metal fence loomed across the entrance to my farm. On it, bold red letters screamed at me. "Property line, HOA access restricted." Still, reeling, I glanced to the sides. Two grimy, yellow-painted construction trucks were parked diagonally, blocking the entire road, as if someone was declaring, "This land isn't yours anymore." I clenched both fists. It wasn't the morning chill. That made me tremble. It was the fury rising hot to the top of my skull. This was my land. My farm. I had poured my sweat, my labor, and nearly 20 years of my life into every inch of this soil. And now, a bunch of uninvited strangers dared to put a fence right across my gate? I stomped closer, the crunch of my boots on the gravel loud, like war drums. A smaller sign, zip-tied to the fence, swayed in the breeze. I bent down to read, "HOA imposed blockade due to non-compliance with regulations. Gate will remain locked until further notice." The blood in my veins boiled. I had never signed any paper joining any damned HOA. My farm sat on a piece of private isolated land, at least 400 meters from the nearest subdivision, separated by creeks and open fields as natural boundaries. What gave them the right to interfere? Right then, I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's office. 2 rings, then a young deputy answered, "Good morning, Maplewood County Sheriff's Office." "This is Deputy Tom Harris. How can I assist you?" I ground out the words. "This is Jack Morgan. I just found my farm gate fenced off and padlocked by some HOA. They have no jurisdiction here. You need to send someone immediately." There was a brief silence on the line before Tom spoke again, sounding a bit puzzled. "Sir, we did receive some complaints from a nearby HOA claiming you're violating community standards. But legally speaking, they have no authority over your property." I tightened my grip on the phone. "So is it legal for them to erect a fence and lock my gate?" "No, sir. That's trespassing on private property. We'll dispatch a unit to assist." But tonight we're short-staffed. Please be patient." I snapped the phone shut. The anger inside me now blazed like a wildfire. I turned away, chest heaving with rage. Every step I took felt like it was crushing the gravel beneath my boots. I wasn't a man who looked for fights. But if they thought they could steal my land with a few flimsy signs and 2 rust-bucket trucks, they had picked the wrong man to mess with. And then, as I turned around, I spotted something else. Not far from the fence. Something that made my blood boil even hotter. I squinted. In the faint morning light, about 30 meters away from the newly erected fence, a white SUV sat arrogantly by the roadside. On the door, the blue logo of the HOA stood out, accompanied by pale yellow letters, Willow Creek Homeowners Association. And inside the car, I recognized a familiar face sipping coffee from a sleek silver thermos. Melissa Kane. The last time I saw her was at a town meeting more than 6 months ago. Back then, she had introduced herself as the president of the Willow Creek HOA, the wealthy new subdivision built not long ago. And now, on this chilly morning, Melissa sat there, comfortable as if on a picnic, watching me through the car window. Smiling, not a friendly smile, but a smug, triumphant smile, like she had just won a big hand and was waiting for me to collapse. I felt my palms itch. Unacceptable. I'm not the kind of man who picks fights, but if someone invades my property, locks my gate, and then sits 30 meters away laughing at me, sorry, I'm not the kind to sit still and take it. I clenched my fists and marched straight toward the SUV, each step pounding the gravel like hammer blows. The window slid down just before I could speak. Melissa poked her head out, her golden hair falling loosely around a heavily powdered face. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan," she chirped, her voice sickly sweet like fermented honey. "Don't worry. This is just a temporary measure. For your safety." I could hardly believe my ears. "For my safety?" I growled. "You just fenced me into my own land." Melissa smiled and set her coffee cup down in the car door pocket. "We've issued a temporary restriction. Order," she said, explaining as if to a slow-witted child. "Our HOA board received numerous complaints about the new metal eagle sculpture you installed last week. Very intimidating, if you want the general consensus." I exhaled sharply, almost laughing. A metal eagle statue I had placed at the entrance of my ranch, a piece I had specially forged in memory of my grandfather, a World War II veteran, was deemed intimidating? "This is my land, Melissa, not yours," I gritted out. "I never signed any paperwork joining your damned HOA. I don't belong to Willow Creek, and I don't want anything to do with it." Melissa merely shrugged, light as a feather, as if none of it mattered. "Oh, but you know," she drawled, "the road leading to your ranch was rezoned just last month. Technically, it now falls under Willow Creek HOA's jurisdiction." I blinked, heart pounding in my chest. "What the hell did you just say?" Melissa pulled a folder from the seat beside her, tapping its cover like a winning poker hand. "Rezoning documents. Approved," she said with a grin. "Your ranch entrance now sits on common property managed by Willow Creek, which means you're subject to our community regulations." I could feel the blood rushing to my face. This was a trap, a plan laid long. Before today, I had received no notice about any rezoning. No letters, no requests for acknowledgement, nothing. They had manipulated paperwork behind closed doors, exploiting shady town meetings I was never invited to attend. And now, using that sleight of hand, they intended to force me into becoming a hostage. On the very land my ancestors left me? No way. I drew a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I don't care what maps you have or what papers you're waving," I said slowly, every word sinking into the ground like a hammer strike. "This is my land, and I will not let anyone, least of all a greedy HOA, impose their rules on my life." Melissa kept smiling, unfazed. "Oh, well," she said lightly. "We'll see how long you last without an exit from your ranch, Jack Morgan." She cast a glance at the white fence, as if already savoring the sight of me breaking down. She slowly rolled the window up. The SUV growled to life and backed away slowly, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the bitter smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. I stood there, fists clenched tight. There was only one thought burning in my mind. "All right, Melissa, you want a war? Then you'll get into a war." I didn't head straight home. I couldn't. I stood there in the biting early morning wind, staring through the ugly metal fence blocking my ranch's entrance. And I knew one thing. If I didn't act immediately, those rotten HOA bastards would grind me down piece by piece. I'm not the kind of fool who waits around for a miracle, and I sure as hell am not the kind of man who begs for mercy from people who have none. I needed to strike back. And strike. Now. I pulled out my phone, scrolling quickly through my contacts until I landed on a familiar name, Rick Daniels, real estate attorney and an old brother-in-arms from my military days. I hit call. Jack? Early morning. What's going on, buddy? Rick's gravelly voice came through. I need you right now, I snapped. The HOA fenced off my ranch entrance, locked it shut, and accused me of violating community standards. They're claiming the access road to my house was rezoned. There was a 3-second pause on the other end. Then Rick let out a low, harsh chuckle. Dirty tricks. I knew it. Send me the exact location, your property deeds, and any documents you've got. I'll flip over every damn stone they're hiding. Under. Before I could even respond, Rick added firmly, Trust me, Jack. They messed with the wrong guy. I hung up, my hand trembling. Not from fear, but from the slow-burning fury rising in my chest. The entire day I didn't leave the ranch. My phone never stopped buzzing, sending files, exchanging information with Rick, digging through every legal document tied to my land since the day I bought it. I even pulled out my grandfather's old land files from the shed, tattered hand-drawn, maps, chaotic notes, but every single boundary line crystal clear, as if he'd known this day would come, my land, legal, untouchable. And then, buried in that mountain of paperwork, Rick sent a text. Found it. The access road to your ranch used to be public property, but it was put up for sale by the city 3 months ago. And the HOA only filed to claim it. They haven't completed the process. In other words, if you act fast, you can buy it. I snapped my head up. Buy the road, own the entrance to my ranch, and lock the HOA out with the very trap they'd set for me? That's when I heard it deep inside me. The battle drums. Without hesitation, I rushed to my office, powered up my computer, and logged into the county's property transaction portal. It took less than an hour, a few verification phone calls, and a lightning-quick negotiation with the Maplewood County Real Estate Division, and I had officially placed a deposit to purchase the entire stretch of concrete leading to my ranch. The price, pocket change, compared to the freedom I was about to reclaim. That night, sitting alone on my porch, a cup of black coffee in my hand and the flickering glow of a campfire nearby, I stared out across my fields. The wind howled through the white fence the HOA had thrown up, making the red warning sign slap back and forth with sharp, angry clicks. I smirked. They thought I would surrender? They thought I would beg to have my gate unlocked? Not a chance. Tomorrow, when the paperwork was finalized, I wouldn't just break the chains they tried to lock me down with. I would turn their own so-called road into the shackles that bind them. Now, the real game was only just beginning. The next morning, before the sun even peeked over the distant hills, I was already standing by the ranch gate. The morning wind was as sharp as a razor, but inside me was a burning storm, pounding with every heartbeat. A text from Rick had just arrived. Congratulations, Jack. Transaction complete. The access road to your ranch is now entirely under your private ownership. I clenched my phone, a cold smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. It was time. I walked straight toward the ridiculous white fence blocking my gate. I didn't call the police. I didn't file a complaint. I took action. I pulled a gas-powered metal cutter from the bed of my truck. The beast of a machine roared to life, growling like a hunting leopard. Residents from Willow Creek not far away started poking, their heads out, confused by the roaring noise echoing across the hills. None of them knew that, as of this morning, the rules of the game had changed, and I, Jack Morgan, now held the trump card. I lowered the spinning blade onto the fence. Sparks exploded. The sharp stench of burning metal filled the air. In less than 5 minutes, the fence blocking my gate crashed to the ground like a fallen enemy. Right then, in the distance, a familiar white SUV came screeching up. Melissa Kane, the HOA president herself. The SUV skidded to a halt in front of the gate. The door flung open, and she stormed out, face flushed red, pointing a furious finger at me. "Jack Morgan! What the hell do you think you're doing? Melissa screamed. I cut the engine on the saw, pulled off my safety goggles, and walked toward her, slow, deliberate steps, like a lion stalking its prey. I'm clearing trash off my land, Melissa, I said, voice low and cold as steel. She gaped, about to launch into one of her rants, but I raised my hand and pulled out a folder. Here, I said, shoving it toward her. Official deed transfer. As of now, I am the sole legal owner of this road, and according to county law, I have full authority to manage, operate, and, if I feel like it, deny access to anyone without written permission. Melissa froze. The confident look that usually painted her face shattered instantly. No way, she stammered. Oh, it's very much a way, I growled. Not only did I tear down your fence, I'm about to lock down the entire access road into Willow Creek. You want to use it? You'll pay maintenance fees. You want a discount? You'll need to submit a formal request. To me. Don't like it? Get ready to hike through the woods to get home. Her face turned ghostly pale as she shakily pulled out her phone, probably to call a lawyer or the HOA board. But it was too late. The game had flipped, and this time I held the reins. Within just 1 week, I had posted toll signs at the entrance. Private property. Road usage maintenance fee, $3,000, month, household. The residents of Willow Creek, used to cruising their Lexuses and Mercedes down my smooth road, were now panicking, screaming, and holding emergency meetings. I heard their HOA had a meltdown. That very night in the community clubhouse, and where Melissa was swarmed by furious residents demanding answers and threatening lawsuits. And me? I sat on my old wooden porch chair, sipping a cold beer, gazing out at the brand new road bearing my name, thinking, you should have never messed with my land, Melissa, but hey, thanks. You just made me a little richer. It didn't take long for a real storm to rip through Willow Creek. Just 3 days after I posted the road usage fee sign, $3,000 a month per household, everything exploded like a powder keg. That evening, as I sat on my porch, sipping a glass of bourbon, the lights from the Willow Creek clubhouse blazed against the pitch-black sky, shouting, arguing, the crash of tables and chairs, the noise echoed all the way to my ranch. I chuckled to myself. Melissa Kane was surely inside, getting torn apart by angry residents with questions and threats. The next day, a man in a neat business suit, probably an HOA representative, sheepishly approached my ranch gate holding a thick stack of documents. He cleared his throat, forcing a diplomatic smile. Mr. Morgan, we would like to renegotiate the road usage fee. $3,000 a month is unrealistic. I looked up from my coffee mug. Unrealistic for who? For me, it's very realistic, I said, narrowing my eyes. If you don't like it, find another road. My land, my rules, he stammered, throwing out all sorts of offers, discounts, extensions, even promises of gifts. But I shook my head at them all. I'm not a charity bank, I said, and I haven't forgotten who locked me inside my own land, claiming it was for my safety. No signing, no compromise. Only my rules. News spread like wildfire. Within a week, the HOA splintered into factions. One group demanded Melissa's immediate expulsion. Another threatened to sue the HOA itself for mismanagement. A few wealthy residents, fed up with losing their precious conveniences, started listing their homes, desperate to escape Willow Creek. I heard that housing prices plummeted after just a few sales. One house that had been listed for $1.5 million now dropped to $950,000. And even then, no buyers. My punishment had sunk deep into their bones. And Melissa? Rumor had it she was forced to resign during a tearful, screaming emergency meeting. She left the clubhouse that night clutching a mess of shredded documents, and not a single soul saw her off. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I just sat on my porch sipping my fragrant whiskey, savoring the sweet taste of victory, in my own way. No court battles. No shouting matches, just playing by their rules and owning the game. A week later, Rick Daniels, my battle-hardened lawyer, swung by the ranch, carrying 2 premium cigars. We sat on the wooden steps, blowing smoke rings into the evening. Sky. Rick laughed heartily. "Jack, you're the worst nightmare any HOA could ever dream of." I merely smirked. I didn't ask for it, but if they chose the path of war, then I made damn sure they'd regret every minute of it. We taped our cigars together in a silent toast. And that's how it went. I, Jack Morgan, a simple farmer with a modest ranch, had shattered an arrogant HOA empire without ever stepping into a courtroom, without ever bowing my head, with nothing but pride, grit, and a little bit of legal strategy. And I swear, from that day forward, anyone thinking about testing my patience would have to think very, very carefully. After Melissa Kane got booted from the HOA presidency, I thought they'd finally wise up. I was wrong. They hadn't learned a damn thing. Just a week later, the 3 remaining members of the HOA board, a bunch of loudmouths without a clue, sent a new negotiation team out to my ranch. That morning, while I was checking on the horse stables, a sleek black BMW SUV slowly rolled up to my gate. 3 people stepped out, neatly dressed, shiny leather briefcases in hand. I smirked. They thought wearing suits and Italian shoes would soften me up? Wrong. A balding middle-aged guy introducing himself as Bradley waved at me like we were old buddies. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan. We're here to discuss a mutually beneficial agreement." I crossed my arms over my chest and stood there, cold as stone. "Speak. You've got exactly 5 minutes." He cleared his throat, putting on a professional air. "We understand you're now the owner of the only road into Willow Creek. We'd like to propose a more reasonable fee, around $500 per household per month. In return, we'll assist with road maintenance and, if needed, we could withdraw all previous complaints." I stared straight into his eyes, feeling the arrogance thinly veiled behind his rehearsed words. They still didn't get it. They weren't here to beg. They were here to negotiate, like equals. I smiled. A cold, merciless smile. "Listen carefully, Bradley. I don't need your maintenance help. I've got more than enough equipment and manpower to handle it myself. And those bogus complaints you filed? They're nothing but scrap paper to me." I stepped forward, voice dropping lower. "If you want to use my road, each household pays $3,000 per month, as already announced. No negotiations, no delays, no exceptions." All 3 of them paled. Bradley tried one last, desperate plea. But that would put a huge burden on many families. Can't you—" I cut him off sharp as a blade. "I'm not the one wrecking families. You did that yourselves when you threw up fences and locked me inside my own land. You sowed the wind. Now you reap the storm. I make the rules here. You have exactly 2 choices: pay up or find another way." The meeting ended in an icy silence. BMW spun around and sped off, kicking up dust along the road that now belongs entirely to me. A few days later, the HOA secretary sent me a new contract proposal, this time dripping with humility. The terms were simple: acceptance of the $3,000 month maintenance fee. Full responsibility for road maintenance rests with Willow Creek residents. No HOA shall interfere, alter, or impose any regulation on my private property. Any violation would result in the road being permanently closed. I finished reading and let out a soft chuckle. Finally, they understood. Not everyone could be bullied. That afternoon, I signed the contract right there on my porch under the blazing red sunset. I raised my glass of whiskey and tapped it lightly against the old wooden table. Anyone foolish enough to challenge my freedom will pay with their very existence. And I swore, from that day forward, on this land, when Jack Morgan speaks, his word is law. Since the day I signed the contract, Willow Creek was no longer the land of luxury dreams. It had become my territory. Every vehicle entering or exiting the residential area had to pass through the ranch gate. And right there, mounted on an ancient oak post, stood a brand new sign. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Road access restricted to registered Willow Creek residents only. Maintenance fee, $3,000 a month. Owner, Jack Morgan. At first, many residents tried to resist silently. Some sneaked along rough side trails trying to bypass the road. Some hired lawyers to poke for loopholes in the contract. Some secretly filed complaints with the city. But every single effort failed because I had prepared far better than any of their petty schemes. Back roads? I fenced them off with barbed wire and posted "No trespassing" signs. Lawyers? Rick Daniels, my battle-hardened buddy, had sealed every legal crack beforehand. Complaints? Laughable. The city officially confirmed that my ownership was absolutely legitimate. Then, one by one, the first troublemakers were slapped with hefty fines by their own HOA for damaging community relations. A few families, unable to withstand the pressure, quickly sold their houses and fled Willow Creek. Willow Creek, once a snobby, high-end neighborhood, now looked like a castle built on sand. One slight move of my hand, and everything could collapse at any moment. But I didn't choose petty revenge. I didn't set up checkpoints at the gate. I didn't demand petty cash payments. I simply quietly upheld my rules, like a silent but absolute gatekeeper. The rules were simple. Respect me, and I'll leave you be. Disrespect me, and pay tenfold. And slowly, Willow Creek learned to adapt. Every month, the maintenance fees were wired directly into my account, not a day late. Every car that passed slowed down, yielding politely whenever they saw me. Every glance thrown my way from a distance, even if laced with bitterness, was full of caution and respect. One afternoon, while I was riding my horse down the narrow road back to the ranch, a family-filled SUV from Willow Creek pulled over. The father, wearing a faded old shirt, stepped out and gave a respectful nod. "Good afternoon, Mr. Morgan. Thank you for keeping the road in such good condition." I simply nodded back and nudged my horse forward. No need for flowery words. No need to thump my chest. My actions had already carved my standing into stone. I had become the silent figure that everyone in Willow Creek had to account for, without needing an official title, without needing an army, just one man with iron. Will standing firm on a piece of land no storm could uproot. I didn't need to shout that I had won. They, all of them, understood it every single day as they drove across the road bearing my name. That summer passed, and autumn came again. The winds carried the scent of dry grass and damp earth, blowing along the road leading into Willow Creek, the road that bore my name. Everything had changed. No more threats from the HOA, no more arrogant red signs planted at the ranch gate, no more smug laughter from people who once believed money could impose on another man's freedom. I had won, but not just through paperwork or clever legal maneuvers. I had won with something they could never possess: an unyielding will, a spirit of freedom that ran deep in my blood and bones, and the steadfast belief that on my land there is only one law, my own. I wasn't always proud of having to become a hardened gatekeeper, but if I could turn back time, I wouldn't change a single choice, because freedom isn't something people gift you. Freedom is something you seize, you defend, and if necessary, protect with everything you have. Willow Creek was now just a name. But Jack Morgan had become an enduring part of this land. Not because I sought fame, not because I wanted dominance, but because I had reminded everyone here and myself of a truth. There are things in this world that money cannot buy. That power cannot force. That arrogance cannot be subdued, and freedom, is always worth fighting for to the very end. Today, as luxury SUVs roll quietly down the road bearing my name, as the HOA bows its head and accepts the terms I laid. Down! I know more certainly than ever, freedom is not something you ask for. Freedom is something you take. With iron will and an unbreakable spirit, if they ever thought a lone man would easily crumble under pressure, they were dead wrong. I am Jack Morgan, and I have carved my name into this land, not with ink, but with blood, sweat, and pride. Jack Morgan's immortal closing words. This land I tilled, this road I kept, and this freedom I etched my name into it with blood, sweat, and pride.